Hey everyone, it's Aesah, and welcome to my guide for Six Sorcerer. Six Sorcerer is a comp that got massively buffed in the B patch. It also shares a lot of units with Mech Mentor Ryze, which, as you can see, has fallen off the first page even. I guess it's all the way at the bottom here. So Sorcerer has actually risen to the top. The main units that got buffed were Swain, as well as Karma. Karma got like a 10% damage buff, which is just really big. Um, I personally think this is probably the best comp in the game right now as of the time of recording this video. Could change tomorrow as other comps get optimized. But yeah, right now I think this is the best comp in the game. And yeah, let's get into it. So I'm actually not sure why it shows this variation on meta TFT. If you kind of look into like the level 8 boards, you can see that the main variation is Karma and Ryze. It's the most common as well as like the best performing. Level 9, you can kind of see the same thing, Ryze, Braum. This is a variation that I prefer. I will talk about the other ones, but basically, let's go ahead and put in all our Sorcs. There are 7 of them in the game. Know that Sorc +1 is actually not that good in this comp, just because you actually don't have that many good units to add as extra slots. Um, there's just not that many like clean synergies, and if you can't, or rather the synergies are like so clean that adding an extra unit tends to not be that valuable. So keep that in mind. It's not bad, of course, but yeah. So basically, since there's 7 Sorcs, once you find Gwen, you'll drop one of your other ones. You'll usually drop Kennen, just because he's a 1 cost. You can also drop Ahri as well. You're never dropping any of these other ones. You're either dropping Kennen or Ahri. If you have Janna and you really need the front line, you can keep Kennen, but I think Ahri is actually like a pretty decent unit as a 3 cost. Lux, of course, gives Soulfire to Gwen, so you're always keeping them. Lucian and Karma are a trait pair. They give you 2 out of 3 Mighty Mech. This comp just needs more frontline. So Jarvan is a very obvious add into this comp. It gives you this tanky mech, as well as Jarvan himself is a great frontliner. Now with these traits, this is 7 units, and again, your Gwen is frequently going to be a Kennen. Did not mean to take her off the board there. So basically, at this point on level 8, you can add in 1 more unit. The best unit actually is Braum. He's just a really good bastion for Swain, who's going to be your main tank. Swain got some nice survivability buffs. Even with Swain 2 and Jarvan 2, you're going to want items on Swain. In fact, if you have all 3 of these 2 starred, you still want your items on Swain. Because Jarvan is basically only going to cast once no matter what items you have on him for the most part, and Braum's ability actually only does damage. So having items on Braum is actually pretty ineffective. Also, since you are playing 6 Sorc, that kind of scales Swain's ability, which will multiply with his items. Oftentimes, you're not going to be able to find a Braum. You can play Leona for Bastion, but if you can't find Braum, which is most of the time, Ryze is actually better. Strategist will give you a little bit of defensives as well, and some offenses. And his mentor bonus is actually very good for Sorcs. Attacks grant bonus mana. It just has a lot of synergy because all these units pretty much just care about getting mana and then casting. Item-wise, Karma, you really want the Striker's Flail Jewel Gauntlet build. This is very reminiscent of Street Demon Brand from last set, for those of you who played it. This build basically just amplifies your 90 AP that you have from Sorcs. It gives you the crit multiplier as well as the damage multiplier, and then you want a mana item. Because you already have so much AP, you get all the other multipliers with mana, crit, and damage amp. Striker's Flail also just works really well with Jewel Gauntlet because the Striker's Flail itself gives 20% crit, which is usually wasted unless your ability can crit. So just really good here. The best mana item is Shojin. If you don't have Striker's Flail for whatever reason, like let's say you have Death Cap, like you don't have a choice, you never got dropped the components, blue is a tiny bit better. Blue would be 20 mana every 4 seconds, while Shojin would be 19 mana every 4 seconds, so pretty much the exact same. Honestly, they're really interchangeable. But once you have Striker's Flail, which gives you 20% attack speed. Shojin's a tiny bit better. Again, it's very, very, very close. If for whatever reason you have too many tiers, just make this item. They're basically the exact same. That being said, this comp really does not want swords. So just most of the time you're just going to end up with Shojin because at some point in the game you're going to end up with a sword, and the best way to use it is to make Shojin. Tank items, as I've mentioned in some other videos, if you've been watching them, you just kind of use your leftover tank items on Swain. So let's say you have a chain. If you have any too many more rods, make Crown Guard. If you have any too many tiers, make Vow. More likely, though, you're going to have something like too many cloaks, so you'll make like Stoneplate. All these items are pretty much the same. If you have too many gloves, you make Steadfast, but usually it's not going to happen since Karma takes 2 gloves. But you know, if you have 3 gloves, you make Steadfast. Yeah. After you have your 3 tank items, whatever they might be, just throw some stuff up here. The next things you want to prioritize after your tank and karma items are shred and anti-heal. If you can't get these with items, you can get them with power-ups, but ideally you have them with items so you can get a better damage power-up on karma, which we'll go over in a bit. Gwen is going to be the best applier once you have her. Before then, I like Lux. Ahri is a slightly better unit, but she only hits 1 unit at a time, whereas Lux does a 1 hex radius. So her first cast is generally hitting like 3 units if you put her in the middle here. So you'll want like Void Staff and Morello. Note that we're not using any bows, so oftentimes you might end up with red buff here. Just for item economy, chances are you're gonna get at least 1 bow throughout the game. If you get 2, red buff is great. And yeah. If you have the choice, Morello's a little bit better, but it doesn't matter too much. Later, you're gonna want to move these to Gwen. I would never build Edge of Night until you already have a Gwen, as it's very bad on any other unit in this entire comp. But once you have Gwen, Edge of Night is going to be her best item. But she doesn't need it by any means. It's not at all necessary. You could just use any other damage item. If you have Val, that's going to be good on Jarvan, but Jarvan doesn't really need any items. If he's 2-star, he's probably going to cast. At 1-star, Val is pretty nice, but tiers are kind of hard to come by. You want Void Staff, you want Shojin. So it's just hard to come by tiers. And on level 9, you can fit in Bastion. Ideally, it's Braum, but if not, there's not too much to play on level 9. You can play Leona. If you have a Sorc emblem, that's what I was kind of saying. Like, it doesn't really help you that much, but maybe you could drop Ahri for like Ziggs or something. You get a little more strategist, but pretty not that valuable, honestly. You can play like a second Gwen 1, slightly better than Ahri, but yeah, the Sorc emblem is just not that useful. Some other variations you can play, Janna and Kennen will give you Protector and Strategist. It's not super useful. Neither of these units are better than, just playing Jarvan if you find it over Janna. And Kennen, like, giving Protector to Kennen doesn't actually make your board that much tankier. For openers, I think this board is really nice because Kennen, or not Kennen, yeah, Kennen, okay, sorry, Lucian, Kennen, Aatrox, all 1 cost, and then if you can get Mighty Mech in, potentially with a Game Plank, this is just already nice. And then you can add so many possible frontliners. Any heavyweight, any juggernaut, any protector, very, very easy to fit. And then you can slowly go up and add Sorcs. You can play 2 Sorc for even the majority of stage 3, even with like 6 units, maybe something. If you have these units, maybe you can do Udyr. That's a couple traits here, and then maybe a protector. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could just be like a Rakan. You could just use this as your board, for example. Maybe you have Duelist, so maybe you can just use even like a Viego. You have a lot of flexibility here. Okay, I think that covers everything I want to talk about units and items with this comp. For being contested, when you scout, note that Jarvan is going to be contested by like Cassante Akali players. They want like Jarvan and Ryze for Executioner, and if you're playing Strategist, you might as well play a Jarvan. Obviously, you're going to be contested by 4 Mentor players. They're going to want Ryze and Jarvan. And you'll also be contested by Katarina reroll players wanting Ryze. And then sometimes they'll want Jarvan, depending on whether they're playing the Vertical Battle Academia. So just be aware that Jarvan is and Ryze are both like pretty hotly contested units. Um, they're not super core to this comp, but it's pretty important to get one copy of Jarvan for your mech and strategist. All right, next let's talk about power-ups. Where should I go first? Let's look at individual units. So Lucian is frequently going to be your early game item holder. Lux is another possibility. Lucian has a really OP power-up, Bullet Hell. Fires 30%, 5% more projectiles. It's just really good on honestly anyone who can use it. But Lucian, especially, it's the best on him because he fires 4 shots, 35% of 4. Well, it rounds up to 50, so he fires 6 shots. So he's actually bullet hell is basically just 50% more damage. It's actually very crazy on Lucian. Pursuit is pretty good. It can surpass bullet hell if you ult like 4 or 5 times in a fight, but normally you're not ulting that much. So bullet hell is definitely preferred, but Pursuit's definitely not bad either. Midas Touch is always good. It gives you a little bit of combat strength, but just getting the extra econ early game is very high value. The other one I want to talk about is Lux. Lux is one of 3 units in the entire game that can roll Heart of Gold. If you have a really strong opener, I always check my Lux first. If I have a Lux on stage 1, I always check to see if I can roll Heart of Gold and then try to play into this line with a strong opener. If you check on stage 1 and you hit this, you can try to take like a very aggressive augment on 2-1, something that maybe gives you items, and just try to win off of that. Or maybe something like Silver Spoon that'll let you go level 5 pretty much immediately. And then you just make a lot of econ, obviously, if you're able to win rounds with Heart of Gold. So eventually, you will want a power up on Karma and a power up on Swain. Swain, I don't think has anything too crazy. I actually like Selfish just because this is such a high damage comp. I don't know how good this actually is, but it kind of feels good. Your team does a lot of damage and he just like heals, right? So I like this a lot. Resistant, I've talked about this in my other videos. I think this one is good. It's really hard to evaluate. The math on it is just really tricky, but it feels good when I have it. Karma power ups. I'm not extremely confident. It's still pretty early that I've been playing this comp. In fact, I've only played this comp 3 times and I've gone first every single time. Uh, but I think efficient is extremely good. Abilities cost 20 mana, less to cast. I personally think that it's probably the best one. Shadow Clone is also really good. It's basically 25% more damage. Mage is also very good as well. So you're casting twice, but you're dealing 25% less. So you're doing like 50% total. Karma does have like a kind of long cast animation. It's not crazy long or anything, but I mean, basically it'd be 50% more damage if she didn't have a cast animation. But because of the cast animation, it's not quite that much. That being said, it's still very good. Soul Chipper, I'm not really sure if this is good. Karma does do a lot of instances of damage, but I don't really feel like it's that good. If she does several instances of damage to one unit, that unit's probably already dead, so reducing their magic resist doesn't seem that valuable to me. And yeah, like if you don't get Jewel Gauntlet, Critical Threat can be fine, but you really want to have that Jewel Gauntlet plus Striker's Flow combo. Prioritize it really highly so that you can get some of these other power-ups that are really valuable. Same thing with stuff like Sky Piercer. Shred is fine if you don't have Shred otherwise, but you really want to prioritize getting Shred somewhere else in your comp so you can get stuff like Efficient or Mage or even like Keen Eye if you run out of fruits. Or a Magic Expert as well. Next, let's talk about Gwen. I personally, if I hit Gwen too, I like to move my power ups to double damage Karma and Gwen. I know some people like to keep it on Swain. I think it's better on just both your damage units. Needlework is Gwen's specific power up. It's actually quite bad. Avoid this one. Gwen's best power up is Hemorrhage, which is Interestingly enough, bad on a lot of other units, but Gwen will chip down the backline a lot and get the full hemorrhage value on a lot of units. Whereas for Karma, for example, if she hits a unit one time, that unit's going to die very soon, so you're not actually going to get value out of this bleed damage. Dark Amulet is good. Uh, she takes damage when she casts, but she's just going to heal it back up. And then, yeah, Magic Expert is going to be good, same as Karma. And yeah, those are probably honestly anything that you think like kind of looks good. It's probably going to be fine. Like Keen Eye, totally fine. Just anything that gives you more damage. I think if you need, there's one that gives you immunity crowd control. If you're playing against like a 4 mech mentor, you might want this if they have like a Kobuko stun, a Yone stun, and a Jarvan stun. Even Yasuo might stun here. So it's one to watch out for, but otherwise, I don't think this is as good as just dealing more damage. Alright, I think that's going to wrap it up for this video on Six Sorcerer. Again, I think this is the best comp in the game. It's probably still a little bit underplayed. Even in Plat Plus, you can see the pick rate is only 0.25 for Six Sorcerer compared to some of the other comps like Soul Fighter is played more frequently than it. Yuumi is played more frequently than it. Star Guardian is played a lot more frequently than it. So yeah, it's still pretty underplayed. So definitely try this comp out. Again, I think it's the best comp in the game. If you have any comments or questions, let me know in the Discord, and thank you for watching.